Hello, my lovely students. It is time to talk about this character called Shi Huangdi. So, good morning to you, or good afternoon to you, or good evening to you, whenever you're listening to this. Um, I think this lecture is very cut and dry. I think it's easy to follow. I think it's totally understandable because China's in a period of chaos and they need a bad boy. They need a bad dude to whip that part of the world into shape. And this character, Shi Huangdi, is probably the most intense dictator that you've never heard of. Now, we were watching the First Emperor video, and a lot of the information you get from that and the information you get from this lecture will provide what you need to understand this portion of Chinese history. Okay, so we're going to start with some essential questions, just like always. And this time we have 4 of them. The first one is, why was Shi Huangdi successful in creating the first Chinese empire? What were the benefits of Shi Huangdi's ruthless rule? What were the negatives of Shi Huangdi's ruthless rule? And why was this empire so short-lived? Why did he not have a dynasty that lasted for centuries like other Chinese dynasties? Now, before we get started, let me just throw this out at you. Sometimes desperate times call for desperate solutions, and that's what you have to think about. You know, if your life is threatened, you might be willing to do things you wouldn't ordinarily do. But first of all, we got to take a look at this. This is a good map of China and in the time period that we're talking about. So if you look up here, this is 260 BCE, before the Common Era. And here's a number of states who are at each other, man. And I want you to look at this state right here. This state, QIN, and that is pronounced Jing, like what's right below your mouth. So China is in a period of chaos during the late Warring States period. This is 260. Zheng Zhao became Shi Huangdi. So we're going to take a look at this character called Zheng Zhao, which you probably have heard of as Shi Huangdi. And look at that awesome picture. I like his hat. It's kind of like you're looking through like a beaded doorway entry, and you just kind of look at whoever you want. But this is the character, Xiao Jing. I think I pronounced him Zheng Zhao last time. It is Xiao Jing, and he is Shi Huangdi, and the time he lived was 259 to 210. But if you go back once again, this is what China looked like. He would be from this state right here. He's going to consolidate power here and then spread it to the rest of China. So there's good old Xiao Jing. Now, going back to the state of Qin, where he is the leader, he is going to establish power through the use of 2 tactics. Early societies situated by a river. The big problem is flood control and utilizing scarce water during droughts. So number 1, Zheng Zhao was, or Xiao Jing, excuse me. Let me just check that one more time. It is Xiao Jing, excuse me. My apologies. So Xiao Jing's big thing is he's going to control this river. And this is going to benefit everyone. So if you can control the river in times of flooding or in times of drought, it's going to really help. And he's also going to build some canals which facilitate transportation. So this is like the first great public works project in the world, regardless of what civilization we're talking about. Canal building and flood control and irrigation projects. Now the next tactic he's going to use is he's going to end this tactic called Primogeniture. Now just to explain primogeniture, it's like the estate tax here in the United States. It is the concept that if you are a wealthy noble, once you die, your land goes to your oldest son intact. And that's the way to keep fortunes, to keep net worth intact. He's going to end this. When a wealthy landowner dies, that land is going to be divided up among poor peasants. That's huge. Now you have to understand that throughout history, and I like this foreboding cloud here, throughout history, the biggest threat to a monarch are nobles, those that are just underneath him or her that have large quantities of land. And if they can band together, they can absolutely undermine the monarch. And it happened in China. It happened in China when the Zhou dynasty took over for the Shang dynasty and used this concept, developed this concept of the mandate of heaven. So what this character, Shi Huangdi, is going to do is he's going to undermine that. He's going to cut it off at the knee. He is going to make certain that once these wealthy nobles die, that power is then dispersed. Brilliant strategy. And in the process, as he distributes land to all these poor peasants, what he is going to create is an incredibly loyal army. These people who had nothing now have land, and they have Xiao Jing to thank for it. Okay, so once Zhou consolidated power in the province of Qin, he spread out to other provinces and took one after the other with his incredibly loyal army that was very well disciplined and motivated. Now, one thing I want you to understand is he used the same tactics in the rest of China, large public works, ending primogeniture, that works so well in Qin. Also, he promoted this concept of standardization. And through this standardization, what's going to happen is China is going to create this identity. A lot of people trace the word China back to Shi Huangdi, Xiao Jing. In other words, he's from the state of Qin. That's the root word of China. And so in many ways, he would be considered China's George Washington. But as you watch the video and learn more about him, he's kind of like George Washington from hell. He's a very scary George Washington. Now, getting back to this concept of identity, there was a lot of things done to standardize China. And I'm going to give you a list right here. Creation of a Chinese identity, the very first thing you would do is you would standardize weights and measures, which we all take for granted today, but imagine if Pennsylvania used the metric system and we did not, and then you went to Pennsylvania, you're like, oh man, it's 40 kilometers to Pittsburgh? How far is that? And that's just like a simple annoyance, but if you're doing business from one area to the next and there's different weights and measures in those areas, it creates issues. Creation of a Chinese identity also had to do with standardization of coins, which was a big deal in the United States prior to the creation of the first national bank. It hindered the American identity, so he's on top of this right out of the way. Shi Huangdi wants standardized coins, standardized laws. I just thought this was an interesting image. In other words, like a constitution, like something is illegal in this province, it's definitely illegal in the next province, which creates a standardization and identity. Hugely important. Creation of standard writing. He even talked about standardized axle lengths on carts. So the roads that were constructed during this time could serve everyone. And these roads linked different people in the empire and made them familiar with one another, again creating this cohesive political unit. Public works in the forms of road building. Shi Huangdi created a highway system that rivaled Rome, and Rome was constructing its highway system at roughly the same time, roughly 200 BCE. And then this is utterly fascinating. A big portion of Chinese transportation took place on rivers. So during Shi Huangdi's fascinating rule, he built something called the Magic Canal, or Lin Ku Canal. Now, I have to talk just a little bit about this canal because it's just outstanding. It connected the Jiang River, which flows north into the Yangtze, with the Li River, which flows south into the Gui River and the Xiao. The Xiao River is the river that drains southern China, and thus is part of a historic waterway between the Yangtze and the Pearl River Delta. It was the first canal in the world to connect two river valleys and enabled ships to travel 2,000 kilometers, or 1,200 miles, from the latitude of Beijing all the way down to Hong Kong. So this was truly the world's first great canal. It would link rivers that flowed slightly north to rivers that would flow slightly south, and opened up the interior of China. Now, the last great thing that I want to talk about in terms of public works, in terms of creating this Chinese identity, is the Great Wall of China. Now, the Great Wall of China did something very useful. It helped keep out northern invaders from Mongolia. And the Great Wall of China, as you can see right here, here's a map of the Great Wall. Shi Huangdi linked up all these fortifications and formed a barrier that would protect China from northern invaders. Now, there's an urban legend that the Great Wall of China is one of the only man-made structures you can see from space. Well, look how wide it is. If you can see that from space, people, then you can see the patio out in front of Big Walnut from space. So that's an urban legend. Okay, now, here's what you need to know about Shi Huangdi in terms of the brutal part of Shi Huangdi, about the strong part of his government. He believed in legalism, man. I mean, he absolutely embraced this concept of legalism with the two handles, punishment and reward. While you watch the movie, you're going to see this. You're going to see him reward the peasant soldier who decides to fight for him by giving him promotions in the military and then ultimately a wife. You're also going to see how he deals with people who challenge him. How about how he dealt with the intellectuals? He just buried them alive, burned books. He was incredibly ruthless. Now, the person that, you think about Adolf Hitler, you think about Joe Stalin, they all had henchmen. So Hitler, it might be Heinrich Himmler, the leader of the SS. Or for Joe Stalin, it'd be Joseph Beria, the leader of the secret police. Well, Shi Huangdi's got a character like this. His name is Li Sai. And Li Sai is the person who, he was a bad dude. Now, if you see this picture here, this is an image, this is a photographic image of some dictates from Li Sai during Shi Huangdi's rule. And they're basically, don't do this or we'll kill you in incredibly painful ways. Now, from the movie, check this out. You get the impression that Li Sai rigged things. He's the character that right after Shi Huangdi died, found his will, destroyed it, altered it, got his sons involved, made sure that his son, who was the next in line, was killed, and he practiced something called Machiavellian politics. Now, this is a term that's used in many humanities classes at the college level, so it's a good one for you to know. Niccolo Machiavelli was this politician in Renaissance Italy who would use every underhanded trick in the book to try to get an advantage. So if you hear that word Machiavellian, if somebody accuses you of playing Machiavellian politics, they're not paying you a favor. And as you saw in the movie, it became clear pretty quickly that Li Sai was trying to rig things right after Shi Huangdi's death. So they gave him a taste of his own medicine. They subjected him to something called the 5 punishments. The 5 punishments is an ungodly set of things to endure. But the whole point of punishment and legalism is to scare the living hell out of potential lawdoers. Lawbreakers, excuse me. So if you see somebody getting tortured, you might be like, I don't want that to happen to me. The first one of the 5 punishments is called Mo. Now, Mo is taking someone and tattooing their face. Now, this young lady right here might think that this is pretty cool, or the boxer, oh, what was his name? Mike Tyson, he has his face painted. You guys probably don't remember him. But I think in her case, she kind of likes it. I mean, she's like, this is like tattooing things you don't want on your face, like, I'm a traitor. Okay, here is Yi. Yi is just awful. They take you and they chop off your nose. Now, believe it or not, in some parts of the world today, they still do this to shame people. And when you have your nose chopped off, you don't look very good. So, and it would be very painful. So after they tattoo your face, they chop off your nose. And this would just be god-awful. They take a hacksaw and right about, oh, I don't know, calf, shin level, they're going to take off this area right here. And then they're going to hold you in some way so you don't bleed to death, but that's going to be incredibly terrible. That's you. Gong people, oh boy, gong. Gong, 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 gong. Full castration. We're not talking about just the testicles, but the penis as well. All of it gone. Yes, I'll spare you. And last is Da. This is where you get executed and you get drawn and quartered. You probably saw this in the movie. They tied that dude's legs and arms to horses and they went in the opposite direction. But by this time, you don't have any sex organs. You're tattooed. One of your legs is gone. So I imagine it's a welcome development. Now, one thing that's really significant about Shi Huangdi is he died in 210. The Qin dynasty only survived for 4 more years after this point. And this demonstrates a principle in history. Shi Huangdi was very good about creating institutions which fostered this Chinese identity. But at the same time, he didn't create institutions of government. For governments to survive, the institutions of government have to be more important than the leaders. You can look at the United States of America in the summer of 1974. Richard Nixon is the only president in American history who resigned office. Now, when you resign office, that's a pretty significant event. And what happened here was the vice president took over right after him. So that was this tremendous test of the American political system. The fact that a president could leave office and someone could take over. Because we have this concept called the Constitution, which we hold in high esteem. So if President Obama were to die, Joe Biden would take over and they would not miss a beat. Very significant. China didn't have that. China had this tremendous allegiance to Shi Huangdi. Once he was dead, the empire crumbled. Okay, people, that is big lecture 4.